Yeah, just a question about the economic basis of cities. So this is really more towards Éilis than Anne. You mentioned the GLC, for example, in London as having a critical mass where it would intervene in the economy. Do you think there's any scope for the party proposing something in Dublin that would address the economics is at the basis of everything, otherwise we're just dealing with the political sort of superstructure that comes around it, okay? We're mopping up after the fact. If you're looking at things like housing policy, for example, surely housing and job location has to be a major consideration. So, for example, I live north of Navan. I work in Ski. It's 50 miles. You know, you talk about West Dublin. Navan has gone from 15,000 to 30,000 in 20 years. Those people all work, if they are working, they're working in Dublin. There's no work in Navan. You know, if we're talking about models for a socialist alternative to cities, surely it has to be to remove the petty bourgeois sort of retail mentality of self-employment and job, you know, wealth creation, to remove that and substitute it for something else, a collective wealth creation, collective employment and living and life experience. And is there any scope, do you think, for us doing any of that through Dublin Council?
Okay, we'll take that. Paulie, and then Nick.
So I think just to go back to the very first point of controlling the price. Sorry? Yeah, I just want to give one example. The average price of agricultural land is 15,000 euros. The average price, not the average price, the lowest price in a city for development land is 1.5 million euros per acre for zoned land. That is at the minimum of 16 units of housing per acre at 100,000 per site. So we're actually looking at that level of inflation. So the level at 1% spent on corruption. You know, there's a ferocious amount of money swirling around. At 5% spent on corruption. And just look at, and from their point of view, it's money well spent. You know, buy at 15,000, spend 15,000, and you've got the change out of 1.5 million. So unless that is tackled, you know, then we're always going to be playing catch up. And we have to go back to that. And if we have to change the constitution or fight for that, then that's what we have to do. But all this weekend about, you know, it's hiding in the constitution. If that's what it takes, that's what it takes. That's what we have to do.
This notion of things being turned into commodities. I mean, housing as a basic need has been turned into a commodity. Health, as we know today, there's a joint venture between the new version of health, the UCD program, etc., which is part of the Beacon Group, which is also part of the bastard that's trying to take over Irish water, etc., etc. So again, commodification. And when it comes to the planning process on land, as Parry pointed out, there is an enormous increase in value from the stroke of a pen and with nothing else done. If we are to seek the decommodification, that's a process that we have to be engaged in. There was a particular strategy back in the 1970s when the Communist Party in France actually had considerable influence, and it was the Greater Paris region. And what they had was, again, the usual 5-year plans that all corporation councils, etc., set up. And what they set was land had particular values, land certain uses, leisure, residential, commercial, etc., industrial. And what they did is that where they changed the use value of the land, where they changed from, say, residential to industrial, the price of that land was set at 1 year prior to any decision being taken. And if there was a shift in price as a result of that, it was subject to a tax of up to 100%, the differential, minus inflation. These are things that we should specifically look at, to act not just as a punishment, but as a disincentive for this buying up, speculating land as something for the rainy day. And this is, of course, even as we speak, has been going on And we're well aware that as early as 2007, 2008, when the crisis came, there were people with liquid assets were buying up land for strategic long-term investment. But I just would like to bear that in mind. I think people would bear that in mind.
Thanks.
Okay.
So just Alan, what Alan was asking about, what's possible, I think one thing that should be said is that this seems like a local policy, but really in the Irish context it's a national policy about local government. None of this can really be implemented given how local government is currently structured. So I'd say, yeah, it's not really possible to have much of an economic impact on the city at the moment in Ireland. In England, the impact of the Greater London Council was such that eventually Thatcher ended up changing the rules, and it was becoming more and more powerful as an economic driver, including in how the Docklands was developed and things like that, and unions having a great say in that. But at the moment in Dublin, it's very, very limited in scope in terms of the economic impact that you can have. I had something to say about the price of land. It's kind of linked to the point you were making around the difference between like punishing people when they don't do good things with land and disincentivising speculation. Like the area here in the North Inner City has one of the highest densities of undeveloped land in an inner city anywhere, and it's one of the highest levels of undeveloped land in Dublin. And that's really scary, you know. So like there's wonderful communities living in the city and it's their home, and the proposal which Oisin Quinn, the former Lord Mayor of Dublin, has brought in is around a tax on derelict land, which is, like you say, punishing people for not using their land productively. But at the same time, if it comes in, all it's going to do in the current system is lead to a whole load of disastrous development in the communities that we live in. So yeah, I think you're right, like this idea of just punishing people for not doing things that are productive isn't sufficient. And just in terms of the Constitution and the constant reference back to the Constitution's protection of private property rights, there's a number of things that the Labour Party included in their manifesto and that their legal advisors believed were constitutional before they went into government, and they've since rolled back on that. So actually I think that like there's a huge potential to push that constitutional protection of the private property rights much more so than governments have. So.
Okay, thank you.
Was there, the Attorney General now, was there a legal advisor?
Yeah, they've changed their minds.
We're running very late, so I'm going to have to move the agenda on. But before I do, I just want to thank both speakers. I think one thing about this session is it proves that we need more work on it. I think Finnegan in particular could give us a whole day session on actually what has happened in the city over the last number of years. And I think Éilis' programme that's set out there really sets the work that we have to do as a party in Dublin. So I just want to thank the two speakers very much in terms of what their contributions were.